Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Black Hills Information Security Webcast. My name is Jason Blanchard. I'm the Content Community Director here at Black Hills, and today joining me is Patterson Cake. That is his real name. I remember the first time I met him, I was like, seriously? So I've known Patterson for years. I think Patterson is a fantastic human being. And here's the thing, like when he first presented for the very first time, and I ever got a chance, I was like, this guy cares. Like that was the main thing from Patterson. Not only was he able to speak eloquently, not only was he able to like teach in a way that was understandable, but like you could tell Patterson cared. And he cared about what he was teaching and he cared about who was hearing the content. And so today, Patterson's going to talk about Excel. And so if you're here, first of all, I love Excel, you love Excel, Patterson loves Excel. We already have something in common, which means we can all become best friends. So if you haven't joined Discord server yet, please go ahead and join the server so that way you can connect with people in the future. If you have questions at any time, feel free to ask them in Discord or Zoom, and we'll do the best we can to answer them as best we possibly can. If not, we'll save it to the end, and then Patterson will ask a series of questions at the end. And lastly, if you ever need incident response services, that's Patterson. And so Patterson heads up our incident response team here at Black Hills Information Security. So if you ever need that, you know where to find us. Or if you ever need any of the other services we provide, you know where to find us. And this is your first time here. Thank you so much for joining us. It's Patterson time. All right, Patterson, it's all yours. I'm heading backstage.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What a wonderful introduction. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. And point in fact, I remember the first BHIS webcast I ever did, and I actually almost cried when I told the introductory story, and that was a tiny bit embarrassing. But there you go. That's just me. And for better or for worse, one of the things that we're allowed to be around here is transparent. So thank you for being here. And with that in mind, I need to start this conversation with a bit of a confession. From the outside looking in, you may think that BHIS is just the perfect happy family, the most wonderful work environment, that everything is just rainbows and butterflies, and that is mostly true. However, it's pretty challenging to work around such incredible people, such amazing minds, such innovative individuals. I mean, I work with a bunch of geniuses, and that makes life a little challenging. And specifically, it makes developing something cool, unique, worthwhile, revolutionary for a webcast is really, really, really hard. And so I think maybe I found the secret to webcast content that is unusual, unique for Black Hills, and specifically, yep, we're going to talk about the benefits and joy of a Microsoft application today. Maybe that's never been done on a BHIS webcast. I don't know. Maybe it has, but definitely a bit of a rarity. And my first fear, of course, was that no one would register. Who wants to talk about Excel anyway? Well, fortunately, thank you for coming. Really, really appreciate that. It's a bit of a shame that the registrations weren't 1337, but we came close. We have one short hour together here today. Hopefully a little bit of time at the end for some questions. And so a bit of an introduction. Context is king. If you've ever been to any of my presentations, it's really important that we stage the context for what follows. And then we'll, of course, talk about Excel. And as always, I have some additional resources for you. We can't talk about all the things today, and we can't really cover all the things in detail. So there's a GitHub repo with some spreadsheets, some scripts, etc. that's linked in the Discord resources, and I'll show it on screen as well so that you have some more things to dig into after this is all said and done. And as per usual, the very end, my contact info is there. I love being part of this community. I love to answer questions, to learn from you all. So an ongoing conversation is super cool from my perspective. Hi, my name is Patterson Cake. Not a pseudonym. Probably would not have chosen that, truth be told. In any case, I am a digital forensics and incident response consultant for Black Hills Information Security, and the bottom line is that that I have a mantra for active incident response, and for most of what I do technologically from a security perspective, and that's simple, effective, and repeatable. And point in fact, again, the simple part's just crucial. I mentioned I work with a bunch of geniuses, some really, really smart and talented folk, some wonderful human beings, and I sometimes I struggle to keep up. So I'm constantly working to make my process simple, effective, and repeatable for my own benefit, hopefully for your benefit, and obviously, hopefully for the benefit of our customers. Complexity is the enemy of security. I believe that, and simple just works well for me. So that's the preamble for what follows for today's conversation. You've probably engaged in a conversation like this at some point in your career or your life outside of technology and security, and the great debate: which is better, Chevy or Ford, or Star Trek or Star Wars, or. And I think this is important. Again, I'm just setting the stage for what follows. We're going to talk about a specific tool today. We're going to talk, primarily about Excel today. Obviously, I've had lots of, I think, sort of useless conversations and arguments with folks over the years about, which is better. Lots of different possibilities, lots of different potential, lots of, again, I think, somewhat inane arguments about which is better. Star Trek and Star Wars, that is not an inane argument, but we'll talk about that later. The point here is that I don't want to be tool dependent. I don't want you to be tool dependent. The age old sort of adage, which is better, a screwdriver or a crescent wrench? And of course, the answer is it depends. It depends on the task at hand. And Excel for me is just monumentally beneficial. There are alternatives. Some of them have strengths, weaknesses. We'll talk again briefly about that. But the point is, in many ways, the process and the things we're trying to accomplish today, as an incident response consultant, asking the right questions and then deriving accurate answers as quickly as possible, as accurately as possible, is my day job. It's the core of the services that I provide. It's really important that you understand that I have a sort of a narrow view of the world. It's just a fact. Active incident response is where I live. These blue circles effectively are where I generally spend my time, energy, and effort professionally. The services we provide for digital forensics and incident response consulting, it's in the midst of active incident response, and then analysis through containment eradication. I'm constantly consuming data, consuming information, and then trying to derive actionable intelligence, trying to derive indicators of a compromise to help organizations I engage with. That is the context for what follows. This does not mean that all the things that follow fit in every context of security. However, I think that they're broadly applicable to security analysts in general, structured data analytics through Excel. If you care, this is the incident response capabilities matrix model that I made up to try and sort of simplify the IR components. And you can read more about that if you're super bored with life on securecake.com. I really like simple functional things. And honestly, sometimes I think, well, like just speaking for myself, I legitimately have been joking and or threatening to do an Excel webcast since the first BHIS webcast I ever did. And I'm half joking because I'm afraid, does anybody really want to talk about this? It's not LEET. It's not 1337. It's not this cool new trick hack. And the fact of the matter is I use Excel every single day in my job, every day. PowerShell, grep, nobody, again, maybe I'll do webcasts on those, but probably not. But here's where I live, and everything that I do in these webcasts, for better or for worse, and again, contextually, everything I do is, I didn't create this for the purpose of doing a webcast. This is legitimately me sharing with you how I do what I do. And hopefully, again, there's intrinsic value to you in that. That's the goal. Investigative data. These are the things that I do with Excel. Are there other alternatives? Of course. If you don't have the money and or the preference, there are open source tools, Calc, LibreOffice, OpenOffice, solid, extremely solid. And for the price, well, free-ish, you can't beat them. They're fantastic. And most of the things that we're going to talk about today, there's direct parity in those applications. Not so much in most of the online versions. Excel Online, fledgling, Google Sheets, etc. I tend away from those, and I fall back on Excel. Although again, OpenOffice, LibreOffice, some very solid solutions through Calc, very powerful, and in some ways, some cooler data analytical platforms. But Excel's where I've been for 100 years, and so probably going to stick with that for a little while. And categorically, again, I'm pulling in data. That's the ingestion piece. I'm parsing data. I'm sure you've been there. The volume of data sometimes that we're challenged with is enormous and sometimes overwhelming. So how do we effectively ingest into something like Excel? How do we sort, filter, search, count to, again, derive actionable intelligence? I'm not just doing this for fun and pleasure. I need actionable intelligence for my customers. And these are, again, the areas of focus. All right, almost enough of the preamble. A few things we're not going to talk about today. We joked about this in the pre-show banter. I'm sort of allergic to pivot tables. I don't have a lot of use for charts. I'm not a huge fan of Power Query because it frightens me. I'm not an accountant, and that's not what we're here to talk about. If you're disappointed, I apologize. We could probably talk about pivot tables later, but I'm no expert, and these are not things I do. These are not things I do on a regular basis. The things that follow, again, for better or for worse, are things that I did literally this morning in casework and case analysis. I spent most of the day yesterday staring at Excel. And again, so hopefully pragmatic insights, not an accountant, which will probably be obvious as we progress. Okay, now for real. I don't know. I lost count. As I was creating this, I thought I'm going to have 10 because that sounds like a lovely number. And then I don't think I got sidetracked. And now I have 1 and 1A and 3C. And anyway, doesn't matter. Diving in, and we're going to start simple and then work towards a little greater complexity. Once again, ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish? And let's find the most efficient, simplest way to accomplish that. Most of the data I'm going to show today is based on a sample case, an actual case from a bootloader infection that is something I can share with you publicly. So a lot of the examples are going to be from that perspective. And number one, right out of the gate, I don't know why CSV seems to be I just can't get away from comma separated value data files. JSON is awesome when available, programmatically ingestible, but somehow CSV haunts me on a daily basis, whether it's M365 log exports, or in this specific example, master file table exports, event log analysis, et cetera, CSV for better or for worse. And so number one is CSV is rotten. It's enormous. The efficiency of the file system is not great. So right out of the gate, number one, super simple, is I want to immediately transition from CSV to Excel native format. And this is just illustrative. Master file table, in case you're not aware, these are NTFS analysis of a hard disk. This is not all of the information or data from a disk. It is the file table, the metadata about the files on disk. Extremely useful from a forensics incident response perspective, but voluminous. This is often one of the largest artifacts that we're dealing with. And this is very small for a master file table, frankly, 165 meg-ish for the top example, 76 meg-ish for the second example, and just immediate transition from Excel or CSV to Excel, and somewhere between 65 to 75% reduction in file size, and then efficiency and capability, and et cetera. So number one, This is about 350,000 rows for the larger of the two, an immediate reduction from 167 megs to 60-ish megs. So first thing I'm going to do, just programmatically workflow perspective. When I open something like this, I'm going to immediately transition from CSV to XLSX. Number one, I told you, we're going to start simple, so hang with me. Sometimes this is challenging. I'm literally working with a master file table yesterday. The master file table CSV was 15 gigabytes. This can be problematic. We'll look at some options for that. But I can't open that in Excel natively, and I would really need to transition to some database platform or something like that. And so instead, for the sake of immediate efficiency, I'm going to continue to try and work in Excel if I can. And one way that we can do that is I do have a script that will actually invoke the XLS API executable and transition using a script, the CSV to Excel. So if you can't open it, for example, or you just need to do a large array of conversions, then there is this is the reference to the miscellaneous scripts GitHub repo. It's in the resources section. And one of the things here is just a convert CSV to XLS script, which can be, again, super beneficial if you're dealing with something that's large or multiple files. Next in line, splitting something large into multiple chunks, a huge CSV into multiple chunks can be super beneficial. And again, often this is sort of specific to MFT or master file table because they're just enormous, as previously mentioned. Direct link to this solution. I did not create this. This is actually part of the MFT to CSV GitHub repo, which is a really cool tool that will actually extract an MFT into CSV on your behalf. And the fine folks there have also created a script that will break a large CSV into chunks, which is also super pragmatic. I do not have that here, but I have it directly linked right here on the GitHub repo that I just mentioned. So super useful when you're dealing with, well, a 16 gigabyte MFT file, for example. Okay. A few shortcuts, and you're probably familiar with some of these or most of these, and from my perspective, it's not a shortcut if it doesn't stick in my brain. If I have to look at a list of shortcuts, then it's no longer a shortcut for me. So these are just a handful of things that probably through repetition, I'm doing these things constantly. And so they stick in my brain and they're super useful for me. Again, imagine if you will, I'm not going to do this on these particular slides in this demonstration because it's just too voluminous, but I'm often dealing with a couple 100,000 rows, in a dozen to 2 dozen columns. So we're talking about fairly large data sets. And so I need the efficiency to be able to view, move around, etc. So let's just take a peek and see if I can actually demonstrate some of this. Hopefully you can see that okay. The data is not important really at this point. This is just an example. This is an extraction of browser history from the case I mentioned just a minute ago. And there are a couple things that may or may not be immediately apparent. I think I actually goofed with this already. So first thing I'm going to do, well, a couple things I'm going to do. Often I want to see all the things, right? Generally, the columns are concatenated like this. This is super useful, right? No, not particularly. What that means, of course, in Excel world is that I can't see the entirety of that column. So it's been concatenated, abbreviated. That's not helpful. So one of the first things I will often do is I will grab all of the columns. In this case, I'm going to grab all of these columns. And if I select all of these columns and then hover my cursor, you can see the little cool double arrow thing. This is super useful to me. If I select all and then hover over that line, and then I double click, it automatically expands all columns. I don't have to go through each of these and expand them individually. So often I'll expand all and then I'll shorten something like this because it's very long. Be on the lookout. There's actual malicious content here, and in some of these, I'm going to ask you if you can see it and find it. So that's number one, expand all. I want to see it all. The next thing that I might do, now I've made it, sorry, my Zoom is huge, as you might have noticed, for your benefit, and so it's going to be a little bit of scrolling that I probably wouldn't normally do. So select all, expand all. One of the other cool things that I love is the ability to extend a formula. Again, let's say there are 176,000 rows in this, and I need to perform a calculation. And let's just say it's O2 plus 1. Super useful, as you might imagine. I want to perform a calculation on the data element in the O column. And so I want to extend this all the way down. Another super simple, super useful shortcut. As you can see, that little corner right there has a little square. And if I hover over the plus and I double click, then that will extend that formula all the way to the end of my 176,000 rows, which again, super, super useful, super handy. I want to confirm. So another thing I often need to do is I want to go to the end of this column, control down arrow takes me all the way to the end, control up arrow back to the top, control shift down arrow selects all of the items, control shift up arrow, the same thing. I use these all the time. Super, super useful. Again, very simple, but make my life easier when it comes to initially navigating this particular data set, for example. All right. There's lots more, obviously. Those are the ones that stick in my brain, again, because I think I used them 27 times this morning. The next thing. I had to wrestle with this yesterday. And I wrestled with it because I met with a customer. The customer is in Mountain Standard Time Zone. And everything I do, everything we do generally from a forensics perspective is UTC, because UTC is awesome. The reason it's awesome is because it doesn't require me to convert time zones. Time zone conversion is often a pain, often confusing, and I'm meeting with the customer, and in my digital forensics brilliance, I'm showing them all things UTC, and they're going, let's see, wait, when was that? What time was that? Especially, this was happening around noonish, which was super confusing to them. Wait, was this Friday or Saturday or? And so again, I had to pivot and say, okay, time out. Let me convert that for you really quickly. And there's a super, super simple way to do this directly in Excel. The only complicated part is knowing the UTC offset and the current time zone. So minus time is the formula in question. And again, really quickly, let's just look at this and see if I can do it. Let's do right click, insert column. Let's just say this is UTC here. Boom. In real life, it would probably be smart of me to document that, but for the sake of argument, we'll just plow ahead. And then I need to do MDT. So I'm able to say equals D2 minus time, and then put in the proper offset. Let's see, it's actually Mountain Daylight Time right now, I think. So 6, that's hours, minutes, seconds. And what we learned just a second ago, I can double click this cool little square, and now I've converted all of those to MDT for the sake of the customer. And again, super simple, save that formula somewhere, create a sheet like this, for example, and those are just varied numbers from 7, 8, 5, 4, whatever. And then you've got this beautiful, simple way to do on-the-fly conversion. Occasionally, I do it for my own benefit to wait, where am I? When was this? In conjunction with where's the customer located, et cetera. So super useful. That's the minus time. You can do plus time as well, obviously, should you need to. Super handy. The next one is, if you're not familiar with flash fill, it's the coolest thing ever. It doesn't always work, so we'll look at an alternative on the following slide, but flash fill is super slick. And what flash fill does is it attempts to detect patterns in your input and then offer to flash fill the remainder of the column entries based on your selection. What the heck did I just say? I have no idea, but let me show you. Let's do IP. So this is IP with port. This is, an internal URL, for example. And in this example, I really want the IP address discretely. I don't want the port. I don't want the HTTPS. And so what I can do in general in Excel, I can type in what I want. Part of cell B, 1.1. And then I'm going to start typing in the next one. And Excel goes, aha, I see what you're doing there. And now if I just mash the enter key, it flash filled based on the pattern analysis all the way through. And I now have a discrete list of IPs only. And this works with text strings. It works with surprisingly well. Not always. You start typing in a couple entries and it doesn't work. Well, then there's an option. But this is super useful. And you'll see I'm a huge fan of saving, annotating, creating new worksheets. So a lot of times I will take this data, for example, I'll take this column and move it to an additional sheet, create a new sheet, IP addresses, work my way into individual IP addresses, etc. When flash fill fails you, there's this other cool option that allows you this very granular approach to splitting your own data. Super, super cool. This is, in this formulaic example, I'm recreating what flash fill just did for me by combining text before, text after, and then separators. And so you can see here that really what I want, obviously, is I want everything after the whack whack and before the colon. And so I'm using this and say, select all the text after this delimiter, and then embedding the text before. And this is shockingly useful to me when I'm looking at M365 logs, event logs, MFT, et cetera, to say, wait. I don't care about this part or this part. Once again, I'm looking for actionable intelligence. I go to the customer and say, 192.168.1.1 is evil. They don't really want it in the format of HTTPS : whack whack port 80. Got it. I knew that. Whatever. Give me the IP. Super helpful. Find this. This is newish. This is newish functionality. It hasn't existed for a long time, so you may not have seen that. There's more power with text split as well. So dig in and play around with that one. Truth be told, flash fill often works pretty well for me, but this is a little more power, a little bit more granularity for your benefit. Okay, so I want to walk you through. I'm going to pull up an MFT. I'm going to walk you through exactly how I will begin the manipulation from literally open a CSV, save to XLSX, expand columns, et cetera. And this is a tremendous example, honestly. Well, that's my hope. Let's see. Where are we? So this CSV is 26 megabytes. It's smallish. This is from an actual virtual machine, so it's a smallish drive in real life. The output is we go from 26 megabytes to 6 megabytes, which again is reasonably significant. Hang tight while it opens, and I probably need to change the zoom. Okay, this is an MFT file listing. This is part of my rapid triage workflow process. I will talk about that on the very last slide, introduce you to this because I use Excel as part of that. So I'm actually taking the entirety of an MFT, and then I am filtering it based on interesting file extensions. The MFT is huge, super huge. I don't care about most of it. What I care about often is executable content. So this is actually MFT file listing, which is abbreviated. And then more than that, I've actually filtered based on executable extensions, mostly DLL, PS1, EXE. I've thrown in things like zip, 7-zip, a handful of things that are often interesting to pare down. So this is a smallish section of MFT, but it's still pretty large. And if I go highlight A, Control Shift, arrow down, lower right-hand corner, you can see 113,000 rows in this sheet, just to give me an idea. So that's far too much for me to manually review. So the whole purpose and what follows is I need to filter out normal And I need to get to abnormal and or interesting as quickly as possible. And so starting with 113,000 entries, what do I do next? So again, as promised, right out of the gate, I'm going to change this to CSV or to XLS, save. The next thing I'm going to do, this column is large, so I'm going to skip full expansion of the first full path. I'm going to select the others, and then I'm going to look for this cool little double arrow. I'm going to double click to expand. The next thing I'm going to do programmatically is I like to highlight the top column. Often I will do view, freeze top row, so I know what I'm working with here. The next thing that I will often do is this time format is goofy. This is not useful to me. So I'll highlight these two columns. I will right click, go to format cells, custom, zip all the way to the bottom. I'm going to take this timestamp, date timestamp formula, and then I'm going to add a couple of seconds columns because I need a little more granularity. Okay, now I've got a pretty decent view of my world, of what it is I'm looking for. CSV to XLS, expand columns, bold heading and freeze. The next thing I'm going to do is select all the things. I'm going to click this little upper left-hand block, which selects the entirety of my data set. I'm going to go to data, filter, sort. I sort everything. This is important to the workflow process. Sort by what? Sort by a date and timestamp. It is potentially the most important initial indicator in active incident response. I don't care about what happened 3 weeks from last Tuesday, probably. Certainly don't care about what happened in 1998. I care about what happened within the context of this event, alert, incident, whatever. So choose a date. I don't care too much at this point. Created, modified, we could have a lengthy conversation about that. I'm going to go with created just for the sake of argument. There's pros and cons to either. But now this is sorted in a meaningful fashion. I can expand this one a little bit. 113,000 entries. That's far too much. So a couple things that I can do. For example, my data is filtered. I can then begin to filter out stuff, filter out normal. So I'm going to go text filters on full path. And I'm going to do, let's start with simple. Let's say does not contain Windows. Not really interested in Windows System 32 right now. Likely that's not where initial executable content lives from most active engagements. So let's just make that go away. And now let's do Control Shift down, and we've gone from 113,000 to 6,100, a little over 6,000. Okay, we're headed in the right direction. Still 6,000, too much for me to examine. Let's continue. Let's go to our custom filter. Let's do another level. Does not contain Windows and does not contain Microsoft. Elements of normalcy. Not always, but I'm doing rapid triage right now. Get rid of most of the superfluous information. That's hard to say. Control Shift down. Okay, went from 6,000 to 4,300. Okay, again, headed in the right direction. That's still a ton of data. That's still too much for me to parse manually. So let's add a third term to our text filters. Ready? Darn. Where's the third box option? It's not there. Sorry, we've reached the end of our ability to do standard data filtering. Okay. Still, I'm at 4,000 entries, not enough. I'm going to go ahead and clear, and I want to talk about advanced filtering. And once again, let's see if we can bring this down to a more manageable level, a more manageable number. And we can do, I'm going to create a worksheet here. I'm going to call it lists, totally arbitrary. And then I'm going to say, okay, wouldn't it be cool if I could filter this based on date and timestamp? Again, I don't care about what happened in January of 2001. This specific event happened in December-ish of 2023. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to filter on created. This is important. This syntax needs to be identical. I'm going to come over to my list. I'm going to copy and paste that column heading. And then I'm going to create an advanced filter formula which looks something like this, equals greater than 12/1/2023. The syntax is crucial. I'll give you a resource or reference momentarily. And what I'm hoping to do here is say, only show me things with a created date newer than 12/1/2023. That's the confines of my investigation. Back to my original section, I'm going to select any cell in the representative data. I'm going to go to the advanced filter tab. I'm going to say, where is the criteria range? And what I'm doing is I'm specifying a unique range in my lists. I'm going to click this little double arrow. It's going to say, okay, show me where your criteria is. I'm going to come back to lists. I'm going to select the column heading and the value and mash enter. Click OK. And notice that created date is now newer than December 1st. This is pretty significant. Let's see, control arrow down, 14,000 entries. Okay, again, we're on the right track. Not good enough. I need more. Again, we're getting there. Let's continue this process. Let's create an additional list or lists relative to full path. I'm going to copy paste the column heading. I'm going to put it right here and right here. And I'm going to do another formula that says, show me all values that do not equal, double brackets, does not equal or contain windows. The asterisks are important because that allows it to be to have wildcards. So it does not contain this string. Whoops, I forgot the last quote. I'm going to expand this so you can see it. I'm going to do the same for Microsoft. Okay, now I'm going to come back here, select in my range again, apply advanced filter. Oh, I screwed up. I knew I'd screw up at least once. Let's clear the filtering. We need to clear the filtering first. And honestly, one of the things that's kind of troublesome sometimes, never do it in demos, is freezing the top row. It goofs with the interaction sometimes. So for the sake of expedience, clear my filters. I'm going to apply, here's my goal. I'm going to apply all three of the filters that we just created. I'm going to say, only show me things created after December 1st, and only show me things that don't have Microsoft or Windows in full path. Ready? This is the scariest part of my demo. Okay, select any column in the range, data, advanced, select the filtered list. Now watch this. I'm going to choose all of these. I'm going to mash enter. I'm going to say okay. And I literally, rather slowly for the demo, but in real life, in a handful of steps, maybe a half a dozen, I went from 113,000 entries to that. And if you want to stare at that for about 10 seconds, real life, no joke. This is full MFT file extraction, filtered by file extensions. I'll show you how in rapid triage workflow at the very end. Filter, sort, date and timestamp, clear out normal, and right there, 2 indications of malware detonation on this endpoint. Most of my job is done, no joke. In identifying initial impact. This is bootloader, by the way. This is a download of a bootloader zip file. This is the extraction of malicious JavaScript. Boom, all with Excel. Makes me happy inside. That was a lot to take in, so hang with me. Important notes. Important notes. In fact, you know what? I'm not going to belabor this point because I care about you. And this is a fantastic link on the GitHub repo to advanced filtering. There are some caveats. If you're going to do this in real life, practice, practice, practice. Once you get it down, it will make perfect sense. But there are some really important caveats. For example, as I mentioned, these need to match the column headings in your worksheet exactly. And then if you put this here and you put it here, that is different. That actually is an or statement. That let's assume this is something else. Let's say whatever, Java. If you select both of these as your filter, that's an or statement. This or this, unknown or Java. And if you put them in unique rows, it's an and statement. Columns, rather, it's an and statement. So it's unknown and Windows. So some caveats, some things that you're going to have to wrestle with just a little bit, play around, get familiar. It won't work once or twice or 5 times. But once you get this nailed, the possibilities are endless. You can take a huge data set and filter all the things via keywords, ranges, et cetera, et cetera. So again, one more time, great overarching article from Microsoft about how this works and how it's supposed to work, and crazy useful. I'm a huge fan of frequency of occurrence. Sometimes I want the most frequent, and sometimes I want the least frequent, depending on what it is I'm looking at. So this is a great way to just quickly ascertain if I'm looking at like firewall logs or IIS logs, web server logs, that kind of thing. Might be really interesting to note the most frequent IP addresses or the least frequent IP addresses. So this is just a quick way to do that. Let's see. I have an example somewhere. Where have you gone? Okay. Stand by. Let me make it bigger so Jason doesn't get mad at me. So this is a list of IP addresses. Again, often it's just gazillions of them. It's tens to hundreds of thousands. And this is just a quick way to say, count if what? A range, column, that's the source information. And then count if what? Put the top column in question, count if data range, which is the entirety of the A column, and then count it if it exists in A2. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to double click the little square. And now you can see I've established frequency of occurrence for this log entry for these IP addresses. Then I can, of course, sort by count and say, whatever, depends on what you're looking for. I want the most frequent. There you go. I can reverse that, of course, and do least frequent. Again, just super simple analytics that can be really beneficial in terms of analysis of data. Which do I care about? Often I really care about the smallest, the long tail. These are weird, right? These aren't as normal as the previous. I'm not sure what this came from, but the most frequent is my IP address. So I don't care about that one. These are the ones I'm like, happened a handful of times, could be interesting. Again, that's what I mean by frequency of occurrence, and count if is super beneficial. All right. Couple more. We're getting towards the end, so thank you for your patience and for hanging with me. Conditional formatting. Oh, I love this. Messes with me all the time. If you don't get this just right, it's stupid. When you get it right, it's a huge opportunity for baseline analysis. And what I mean by that is if I have a list of normal and a list of, I'm not sure what's normal, I can compare them using conditional formatting and visual indicators to say, show me what stands out. Show me what is not normal based on a list of normal. What do I mean by that? Let's do a super silly example, which apparently I hid from myself. Had to do that at least once during this. Basic comparison. There you are. Okay, let's zoom in a bit. So this is a silly example, but simple and easy to visualize. So here we are. This is normal. This is my definition of baseline. These are the fruits that I grow or that I sell or that I eat or all of the above. And this represents normal and baseline. And this is my target. This is my list. This is my list of what in real life? This is my list of running processes on an endpoint, my list of services on an endpoint. Those are often between 200 to 300 entries. That's too many. Show me what I can ignore. Show me what's normal and or highlight what's abnormal, if you will. And so what I can do here is I'm going to get my taskbar back, make that go away. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply conditional formatting to this, pretend this is my list of processes or services. I'll show you an actual example in just a sec, but just to keep it simple, I'm going to select this entire column. I am going to go to conditional formatting, manage rules, new rule, rule based on formula. And then I'm going to say COUNTIF, our old friend. I'm going to define the baseline worksheet followed by exclamation point. I'm going to define my normal range. This is my range of baseline values. And if I get this right the first time, it'll probably be some sort of a miracle, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to define the beginning of my conditional format, which is A1. And then I'm going to say equals 0. And equals 0 means that it does not exist, that it does exist in my baseline list. Then I'm going to say for everything that doesn't exist, color it. Choose a color of your choice. I'm going with ugly light orange for some unknown reason. And if all goes according to plan, I apply that formatting. And these are the things that I now care about. These are the things I need to examine. And so again, so Apple is normal, right? Apple is part of my baseline. So I can ignore all of these things. So the next thing I'll do is say, well, in that case, don't show them to me. Show me only the stuff, filter by color, pink, orange, whatever that is. And now I've taken my list of whatever it is and significantly reduced it based on conditional formatting. This is hugely powerful. This is part of my Windows malware investigations. This is linked directly under my GitHub repo, and I have programmatic components. I have step-by-step. I walk you through how to create that conditional formatting, and it looks like this. Let me see if I can show you really quickly. Services comparison. I'm going to leave that small because it's really not the point. The point is to see the pretty colors. And so what I have here is a baseline of services for an endpoint, known good image, control shift down, 316 services on a typical Windows machine, over 300, too many. I don't want to sort through 300. So come back to my target. This is a list of services on an endpoint I'm investigating. I'm going to come up here to automate. This is documented for you in the GitHub repo. I'm going to apply conditional formatting via a little bit of macro. Do it yourself. I did not provide you a macro-enabled sheet. Run exact same logic that we just did manually. And then if this worked, I'm going to come up here and filter on color. And instead of 300, again, now I have 65 unique service entries that I need to investigate. I just eliminated over 240 entries from my analysis. And again, percentage-wise, efficiency-wise, monumental for me. And as you can see, I've built this out for Netstat, for DNS cache, for tasks, et cetera, et cetera. And this is part of the WinMal investigations. And specifically, this is a whole process based on baseline analysis, comparing artifacts from known good to infected, kind of a thing. Okay, a couple more. I built this out of necessity. I've shared it with you just in case it might be useful. This is me. I've created a spreadsheet that allows you to do public IP address to country lookup. This is super useful to me, again, in doing analysis of IP, IIS logs, any kind of firewall logs. I have this list of source addresses, and it would really help me to know geographical origin, not ridiculously accurate, but enough from a triage data perspective to be really useful. I don't have time to explain it all to you, so I've shared it with you. And let me just show you really quickly how you could utilize this if it has value. Make it a little bigger. Okay. So I have a little note here. The little pink tab is a note if you hover. This is designed for up to 1,500 entries. You can make it 3,000, 20,000, 100,000 entries if you want to, but for my purposes, 1,500 is a good number. And if you want to make it larger than that, then you just need to extend these formulas as I break it, extend these formulas further down the list. All you have to do to utilize this is take your address list, copy and paste it into the A column, and it will automatically convert this to octets, to base 10 for formulaic functions, and then tell you what country this is from. The country listing here is from Geolite. This is Geolite 2, open source GitHub repo, regularly updated. You can update this once in a while, but it's moderately static. This is updated as of a week ago, and then it's just got this country name mapping. You can do this online. There are lots of ways to do this via the interwebs, and I don't like it. I don't want to share this data with the internet. I don't know what the utilization is. I don't know what they're doing with that information if I drop it. Sometimes I don't care, but this allows me to do it discreetly, privately, and just to do some really quick analysis of IP to country. As mentioned, that's right here. And I dated it based on the Geolite 2 database version that I used for this. So that's there for you. Again, there's no code there. It's just formulas. So there's no macros. There's nothing hidden. Should that, again, be useful to you. Last but not least, you may have heard me pontificate about this before. This is my bread and butter. This is a huge portion of my day job, and that is selection of critical artifacts for analysis, acquisition of artifacts for analysis, processing of artifacts for analysis, and then refining, which I do largely in Excel. You don't actually have to use Excel for this. You do have to have the executable, which means you can do it without being licensed and then move to OpenOffice or LibreOffice should you need to. This is a large compendium of my workflow that we've shared publicly for your benefit. That is under Rapid Endpoint Investigations. And this is all the things. If you care, this is step by step by step. And the cool thing about this is that the output, when we extract data from this process, and then we parse data from this process, the output is this. This is artifacts of execution, critical EVTX logs from Windows devices. This is Hayabusa analysis and all of the web artifacts you could ever desire in one spreadsheet, automatically extracted from a Windows endpoint triage data collection, often a couple, 300, 400 megabytes to a couple gigs here for you, staged, ready for your analysis, ready for you to do all the things. This is the same actual case. And no joke, the downloads is generally very succinct. So I can pull data from an endpoint, which I did using Velociraptor offline. I can automatically upload that to S3. I can move it from S3 to my EC2 analysis incident. I can then use PowerShell scripting, which I've shared with you via GitHub, to parse, extract, drop the key details into Excel. And no joke, from initial detonation of the collector agent to instantiation and investigation, it can be as little as 20, 30 minutes, which is nuts. I'm fairly proud of that. And again, no joke, browser downloads view, usually just a handful of entries, even for a typical user. And how long does it take you to figure out which one of those three is evil? Time's up. You got it. You got it. Possibly the strange zip download from a Chinese wiki. Could be. I think I'm done. Want to make sure you get this resource. It's documented a bunch of times. This is living, breathing for me. This is stuff I'm using all the time. I will actually apply updates to some of these scripts later today. because every time I use it, I come up with something new, something useful, tweaks, tunes. I have folk like you. I have multiple businesses. I have some state agencies that are using some of my workflows. I get constant input of like, hey, could you change this, tweak this? Love to hear from you. Check it out. This is me. Drop me a note. Hit me through GitHub if you have an issue. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Well done, Patterson.
Hey, Patterson.
Did great. Lots of applause, lots of celebratory gifts. Yeah, well done.
They're kind. They're good to me. I appreciate it.
The cake is not a lie.
Yeah, there's like 700 people here learning about Excel today.
I know.
And that's always an achievement. So
I like how you ended it too. You were like, I think I'm done.
Yeah. So a couple things. If you haven't checked in for Hackett yet, please do so. If you don't know what Hackett is, it's where you go on Discord and you just say the word Hackett or engage in some way during a live webcast. And then we keep track of it. And then after you hit 10, we give you a reward, and 20, 30, 40, and 50. We send you rewards pretty much anywhere in the entire world. We'll mail it to you to say thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. Because we know that you could have done anything this hour, but you decided this hour to learn something new, improve your skills, and improve the work that you do for the organization that you're with. So Patterson, we had a couple questions, but really, I'm going to open it up to questions now. So if there was something that Patterson did not cover, if there's something you're like, oh, I really wish he would have talked about this, now's the time to ask. But Patterson, my first question to you is, when you first started using Excel, did someone show you these things, or was it you just like fumbling around?
The vast majority of things I've learned in this line of work, and specifically in IR, I just beat my head against the wall until I figure it out. And so most of this, I just learned. I had a problem. I had a question. The first time I looked at a master file table with 173,000 entries, I'm like, crap. What am I going to do? Excuse my foul language.
How dare you?
And so just wrestle with it until I come up. I confess that probably there are people, I guarantee there are people on this presentation today that probably know a better way to do some of the things that I just did. I don't even know that they're perfect. They just helped me answer the questions I needed to answer.
Yeah, I can imagine there's like some people watching you and going like, oh, but if you like did this and
Totally.
this.
I want to hear from those people. I mean, privately.
Privately. Yeah, don't out me in the middle of my webcast.
Exactly.
Yeah. Someone asked, do you ever use pivot tables?
I should use pivot tables scare me. And so no, I don't generally. But in truth, again, the context, which we talked about ad nauseum today, the context is filtering out normal versus abnormal. That is like 98% of what I'm doing. And so I'm not sure how I would leverage pivot tables specifically for that. There's probably a way, but I have not gone there.
Yeah. Deb, do you see something?
Yeah, just people wanting more resources for creating playbooks for incident response, stuff like that.
So how do you prevent the tool dependency that you spoke of earlier? When filtering and extracting such large data sets, how do you ensure accuracy and that nothing gets lost?
That is a great question. I think it's really important that you understand the capabilities and limitations of the tool. I'm a huge fan and probably maybe future webcast fodder. If I can't do it in Excel, then I'm a huge fan of SoftElk. And SoftElk is a much more scalable. If I have 10 MFTs or 100 MFTs, then I know Excel is going to fail me. And so constantly being vigilant on what tool is the best for the task at hand, again, screwdriver versus wrench. That to me it helps me to not be reliant and dependent on one thing. And again, being intimately familiar with what the tools are good at and then what they're not good at. And I'm a hypocrite. I can't help it. I should learn how to use pivot tables because that might be utilitarian. I don't really want to. And so I should follow my own advice.
All right, Patterson, we're running out of time. We might, stick around for a few extra minutes, but we're at the end of the actual game time. So if you could sum up everything today in one final thought, what would that be?
The ability to efficiently parse and filter data is one of the most fundamental components of security analyst role. And so you need a solution. I need a solution. And whether it's Excel for you or something else, I think it's just critical. Seek it out, find something that works for you, and apply it to your job. And I think it will foster your success.
Right. So as we wrap up here today, if you ever need incident response services, it's Patterson. So when you contact Black Hills, you get Patterson. He'll be the one that talks with you and helps you. And we do retainers. What else do we do, Patterson, before we wrap up?
We do proactive services. We do assume breach investigations. We do ad hoc response. We love to talk to you, help you develop playbooks, IR plans. Heck, we don't say no to that many things related to IR. So call me.
Yeah. And if you ever need a pen test, red team, threat hunt, active SOC, or training, or any of the other stuff that we do here at Black Hills, at some point we're like, what if we did this? What if we did this? What if we did this? And at some point we're like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. And so some people don't know about all the stuff. And so we do a lot of stuff in case you ever need us. All right. So we're going to do the thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being a part of this community. If this was your first time back in Discord in a while, please stick around, answer questions, ask questions, be a part of this community because you are not alone. Seriously, you are not alone. You're not alone while you're trying to do security. You're not the only one at your company. I know sometimes it feels like you're doing this all by yourself, but you don't have to. You don't have to. And so you can do this along with us and along with the community of people who want to support you. And we appreciate you being here. Deb, any final thoughts before we wrap?
No, I think you guys said it all. Just again, thank you for spending your time with us. Like you said, we know that there's lots of other things you could spend your hour doing, and we just appreciate you guys showing up and hanging out with us. So yeah, that's all.
All
Thanks.
right, so okay, so that's the end of official time. We're in post-show banter.
Oh,
So,
show.
all right, Patterson, well done.
Well done.
Thank you.
Did great. He did great. There was someone who was like, this guy works for Black Hills and he thinks that there's people smarter than him here. That's weird. That was great. Yeah, he's a humble guy and you can always learn something else. So
yeah. So true.
Well done. Yeah.
So Stephanie wanted to know, will you ever do an IR workshop? And I know you've done IR workshops in the past, but it's been a while. So do you have any thoughts about doing like a pay what you can workshop or something in the near future?
I need to. I would like to revisit. I talked about rapid triage workflow at the very end of this presentation. That's near and dear to my heart. You know, that's my baby, if you will. And I've done some in the past. I need to do an updated version of that and another webcast. So it's coming. I'm not sure exactly when, but definitely. Thank you for asking.
Sure. Yeah, another person said they'd love an IR workshop. I remember Deb and I were doing a backdoors and breaches demo for someone that asked, requested, and we were doing that. And as soon as we were done, they're like, "Hey, we gotta go." Like your workshop was starting.
Yeah.
And they're like, "We gotta go to Patterson's workshop." Yeah, and
they're like, "Yeah, go. Why are you still here? What are you doing?"
Yeah,
oh.
That was cool.
Oh. Yeah, that's awesome. I know you need more hours in the day to create all the fun things that are in your mind.
So Patterson, when you're doing tabletop exercises, like how many of the scenarios come from like incidents that you've seen, or like are you choosing an incident based on what you think that company will see, like, or is it both?
In my perfect world, it's a combination. In my perfect world, I meet with the company, I talk with the customer, I learn a little bit about who they are and what they do, the things that they're worried about. I had a conversation with a customer today, and it's pretty typical. They go, "We know where our issues are. We know where our exposure is," and then we take that, combine it with what we're seeing in real life, and that makes for a beautiful foray, a successful tabletop of real world applicability actually to your environment. That's the ideal, I think.
Yeah. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions. Mainly a lot of thank yous, and we appreciate it. And Patterson, I'm looking around. Also, Batman Billy 3316. You can spell the word lieutenant.
That is impressive.
6 years in the Army.
On the first try.
I told you there were people smarter here than me.
I can't spell lieutenant or colonel.
Colonel.
For those of you sticking around, if you haven't heard about our comic book series yet, it's called The Future Is. It's in a poster right behind me. But
Wow.
starting May 14th,
Journal.
we got into comic book publishing to talk about the stories of the future of our technology. So it's like Ocean's 11 meets Black Mirror. And so if that interests you in some way, it'll be at your local comic shop. And like a cybersecurity company started a comic book publishing company, and it's good stuff.
It's
So
good stuff.
it's
Sounds
so
made
good.
up. Sounds
Yeah.
like why? Why
Yeah.
did we do this, Jason?
All right.
That's fun.
I think that's it.
I think that's it. Any last questions, y'all? We're hanging out for you. 336, 35, 33.
Oh, here's one. Uh, how quick would you turn around forensics on a laptop?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question.
It's just like
Somewhere
full of malware.
somewhere between 2 hours and 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The joy of the process simplified, and you can do this somewhat yourself or walk through the process. Again, rapid triage workflow. Usually we can create the data acquisition collector, get that to you. Once you execute that, or the data is available to us. If we're not working other active cases up to our eyeballs, then analysis can start often within a couple hours. And usually we can complete that analysis in about 3 to 4 hours, depending, lots of variables, but rough timelines.
How is it that we responded the exact same way to that question?
Oh,
Really?
wow.
Yeah,
Great minds.
I guess.
Patterson, one of my like way before cybersecurity, back in the the early aughts when I was not doing any of this, I just had a regular computer. I remember I had one virus essentially download all the other viruses. And at some point it said like your computer has 45,000 viruses on it. I was like, well, just throw it away. But guess what? I still have that hard drive. Do you want it?
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know how hard it is to actually intentionally infect something anymore? It's really hard.
Yeah.
That would be
Shockingly difficult.
interesting. That'd be a fun workshop. Jason, that's high trust, Jason, to give him your old hard drive.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what?
Are you sure? Are you sure?
You know what? Let's not.
Okay.
The good
I thought
news
you wanted to
is
rethink
the
that.
good news is it used to be standard operating procedure for malware to download a bunch of embarrassing things on your machine. So plausible
There you
deniability,
go.
Yes.
at
Nice
least
save.
from 15 years ago, was I didn't go to that website.
And people can change. There's growth.
Yeah, I've grown up, I'm mature. But I do think it's interesting that there are old hard drives that exist that are just full of like essentially ancient malware.
Yeah.
That at some point, 15, 20 years from now, you could revive that malware that no one's used to, or it's been a long time since it's been touched, and might be able to.
Like ancient aliens and ancient apocalypse malware.
Like when they bring that worm back to life after 45,000 years.
That's the parallel grand irony in active incident response. You roll in and the customer's like, I'm so sorry to confess that we're still running Windows 2000 server. And I'm like, sweet, because none of the new malware would detonate on that. It's like reverse security psychology. We've gotten so old that now the malware can't even impact.
Yeah.
Not recommending you use Windows 2000.
Yeah, Black Hills does not recommend Windows 2000.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for sticking around for post-show banter. If you forgot to check in for Hackett, it's still good for like another 15, 20 minutes. And then it's closed until next week. And we'll see you back here for the news and for another Anticast and for a webcast, whatever it is. If you want to show up, we want to teach it to you, and we appreciate you being here. All right, Ryan, kill it with fire, sir.
Thanks,
Kill
Fire.
it.
You did great.